Hey, in case you missed us live this morning or you don't have time for the full hour, here is the condensed audio version of our topic this morning. Are you leaving emptiness? Are you leaving a legacy? Or are you building impact? Are you leaving a legacy of impact? Check out this short overview of what we talked about. Also, under the description will be the link to the full video. So maybe you can join us next time or go back and listen if you hear something that you like. Also, in the description are a few of the quiz questions because we do go through a quiz each morning and we'd love to have you join us. Also, there's some essay questions and some things you can think about in your own time. All right, enjoy the audio.
You've been thinking about legacy, right? Like not just stuff, but the wisdom you pass on.
Yeah, the real impact.
Well, this sermon we looked at based on Proverbs really dives into that, like building a legacy of wisdom, not emptiness.
Exactly. It's like, what are you building with your life?
It really makes you think, like, if you were gone tomorrow, would the people you care about have the wisdom they need to, face life's challenges?
Heavy question.
It is. But here's something interesting.
Yeah.
This sermon actually says our mistakes, the things we might see as failures, those don't disqualify us from leaving a legacy of wisdom.
In fact, they can be the most powerful teaching tools.
That's so true. So many people hold back from sharing because they think they haven't got it all figured out.
Right. But the sermon makes a distinction between knowledge and wisdom. Like, knowledge is just facts and info, but wisdom.
Yeah.
Wisdom is knowing how to use that knowledge, apply it.
Ah, so that comes from experience. The good, the bad, the whole shebang.
Exactly.
It's like,
Like what?
having a PhD in life, which the speaker jokes about. But I love that because it means everyone, no matter what their background is, has unique wisdom from their own journey.
Absolutely. And the sermon emphasizes that it's not enough to just hear wisdom. You got to listen.
Yeah.
Like, really listen.
Oh, there's this funny bit where the speaker imagines a parent saying, "Look at me when I'm talking to you."
Yeah.
But it's so true. We need to be present, engaged when we're learning from someone.
It's so easy to just scroll through social media and let stuff wash over you.
Total information overload. But wisdom, that requires us to be intentional.
Right. Absorb it, internalize it.
The sermon compares God's word to a FedEx package that needs a signature. Can't just ignore it. You have to engage.
Do something with it.
It's meant to be a lifeline, not a souvenir.
Exactly.
Which brings us to the big question. How do we actually share our wisdom?
Yeah. Especially when we might feel like we're not.
Not qualified.
Yeah, like we haven't got it all together.
Because that inner critic can be loud.
Oh, for sure. But the sermon challenges that. It says our wisdom doesn't have to be perfect to be valuable.
I love that.
What's fascinating is the sermon actually suggests our imperfections, our mistakes.
Yeah.
Those make our stories relatable.
Because when you hear someone talk about their struggles, how they overcame them,
It gives you permission to do the same.
so it's not about pretending to have it all figured out.
It's about being real, being vulnerable.
Sharing what we've learned.
And the sermon actually talks about how the enemy tries to plant seeds of doubt, make us question if we're worthy to share.
Wow.
But we can fight back against those thoughts.
Because your experiences, even the tough ones, have given you insights that someone else might really need.
Absolutely. And that connects to the broader theme of breaking free from negative patterns passed down through generations.
Generational chains, the sermon calls them.
But it's not about some mystical curse. It's about recognizing that our choices, good or bad,
Yeah.
they have a ripple effect.
Affecting future generations.
Exactly. And the sermon uses some very practical examples, like financial instability often comes from poor financial decisions.
So if someone grew up seeing their parents struggle with debt, they might be more likely to repeat those patterns.
Right. And that can impact them and their kids.
It's a cycle.
But the key to breaking that chain, teaching stewardship,
Stewardship.
being responsible with your resources,
Makes sense.
making intentional choices.
Mm.
And the sermon even quotes Proverbs. The borrower is a servant to the lender.
That's a powerful reminder that debt can trap us. Not just us, but...
Future generations.
Right. And it's not just finances. The sermon also talks about anger issues.
Another big one. Easy to fall into those patterns, especially if you've grown up around them.
But the sermon challenges us to break that cycle.
Choose patience. Even when it's hard,
I feel that.
it quotes Proverbs again. A gentle answer turns away wrath.
Sometimes the wisest thing is to not say anything.
Exactly. Silence can be powerful.
The sermon also talks about a lack of faith being passed down.
If someone didn't grow up seeing faith in action, it can be hard to know where to start.
Like you don't know what you don't know.
Right. But we can change that narrative, make faith a daily conversation.
Not just church on Sundays.
Exactly. Weave it into everyday life.
Showing your kids what it looks like to live out your beliefs.
The sermon quotes Deuteronomy, where it talks about teaching God's commands constantly. When you're at home, walking, lying down, getting up.
Wow. So it's like...
A way of life.
So how do we take all these ideas and put them into practice? Break free from the negative stuff and build a legacy of wisdom.
Well, the sermon has some practical advice for that, too.
Okay, tell me more.
It starts with reflecting on our own experiences and asking, what have I learned? And who needs to hear my story?
Be intentional.
Exactly. Look for those opportunities, even if they come in unexpected ways.
Because sometimes the most impactful moments happen in everyday conversations.
Sharing a story with a friend, a coworker,
or family.
Exactly. And remember, your wisdom doesn't have to be perfect or profound to be valuable.
Right. It's that authenticity that connects with people. Like saying, hey, I've been there. I messed up. Here's what I learned.
Exactly. And it's those mess-ups, those struggles, where we learn the most.
Totally. That really ties into the sermon's point about generational patterns, right? Like those things that get passed down, even if we don't realize it.
The generational chains, as the sermon calls them.
Yeah, and it gives some specific examples, like financial instability, anger issues, and even a lack of faith practice.
Things that can really impact families for generations. Makes you wonder, how much of our own behavior comes from stuff we picked up growing up?
Right, like even if we weren't aware of it at the time.
But what I find interesting is how the sermon frames it. It's not about feeling trapped by these patterns.
It's about taking ownership.
Exactly. Choosing to do things differently.
Breaking the chain.
Right. Using the wisdom we've gained from all our experiences to create a healthier path for ourselves and our families.
I like that. So with financial instability, for example.
The sermon talks about how it often starts with poor financial decisions that get passed down.
So what's the solution?
Teaching stewardship.
Stewardship. Okay, so it's more than just telling your kids to save money.
It's about understanding what it means to be responsible.
With your resources.
With everything. Money, time, talents.
Seeing them as gifts to be managed wisely.
And it might look different for everyone. Could be budgeting, learning to wait before you buy something you want.
Or even teaching kids about investing.
Right. And there's this verse from Proverbs that the sermon brings up. The borrower is a servant to the lender.
Ooh, yeah. That's a tough one. It's a reminder that debt can really hold you back, not just financially, but...
emotionally, even spiritually.
And that can easily get passed down to the next generation if you're not careful.
So breaking that chain starts with being honest about our own habits. And then making better choices, to create a more stable future.
Makes sense. But what about those patterns that feel more ingrained, like anger issues? Yeah. Those can be so hard to break, especially if you've seen it your whole life.
The sermon addresses that too. It talks about choosing patience, breaking that cycle of anger, even when it's really hard.
Because sometimes it feels impossible, to react differently when you've always reacted a certain way.
Right. But the sermon quotes another proverb, a gentle answer turns away wrath.
Easier said than done sometimes. But sometimes, maybe the best response is no response at all.
Silence.
Silence can be powerful.
It really can. And that's a good lesson to teach the next generation too.
Modeling that self-control, that ability to choose a different path, even when things are intense.
Absolutely. And then there's the whole issue of faith being passed down, or rather, the lack of it.
Yeah, it's not like anyone intentionally tries to raise their kids without faith, but...
But if you haven't experienced it yourself, if you don't have that foundation...
it can be hard to know where to even begin.
Right, like you don't know what you don't know. But the sermon suggests that we can change that story, by making faith a part of our daily lives. And not just in a religious way.
Or like...
weaving it into our conversations, our decisions, how we approach life.
So it's not just about Sunday mornings.
It's about living it out authentically.
Showing your kids what it looks like rather than just telling them.
Right. And the sermon even quotes Deuteronomy, where it talks about teaching God's commands diligently to your children. And then it lists all these different times when you sit at home, when you're walking, lying down, getting up.
So it's like a constant thing, not just a one-time lesson.
Exactly. A way of life.
So we've talked a lot about these generational chains. But shifting gears a bit, how do we actually go about sharing the wisdom we've gained? Where do we even start?
Well, the sermon actually has some practical tips for that. It starts with asking yourself, who needs to hear my story?
So being intentional.
Yeah. Thinking about who might benefit from what you've learned.
Because it might not be who you expect.
It could be your kids, your friends, people at work, even strangers.
You just have to be open to those opportunities.
Right. Pay attention to those nudges you get, like, this person needs to hear this.
I love that. And it doesn't have to be this big formal thing.
No, not at all. Sometimes the most powerful moments happen in everyday conversations.
Just sharing a story with a friend, a coworker, going through something tough.
Someone at a crossroads.
Yeah. And it's about being present, recognizing those chances to offer encouragement, advice.
Based on your own experiences.
Because your wisdom doesn't have to be perfect or super profound to make a difference.
Right. It's the realness that connects with people.
Yeah.
That authenticity.
Like saying, hey, I've been there. I messed up. This is what helped me get through it.
Exactly. And remember, you don't have to do it alone either.
Oh, like Moses and Aaron.
Yeah. Moses wasn't a great speaker, so God gave him Aaron to help him communicate.
So we can find people to support us, help us find the words, to encourage us. It's about finding your tribe, the people who get it.
Yeah, finding your people. Your wisdom circle.
Absolutely. Because sometimes, putting yourself out there can be tough.
Vulnerable.
Yeah. So it's good to have those people who get it, who can support you.
Okay, so we're ready to build this legacy of wisdom right. But practically speaking, where do we even begin?
Well, the sermon actually gives us some really solid advice. It all starts with storytelling.
Everyone loves a good story. It's how we connect, right?
Totally. And it's how wisdom gets passed down through generations.
Think about it. We all have stories, triumphs, failures, those lessons learned along the way.
And those personal experiences, that's what brings wisdom to life.
It's like you hear someone talk about a time they really messed up and how it changed them for the better. Those stories, they stick with you.
Way more than some abstract idea.
Because you can relate. You think, okay, I'm not the only one. Right. That's how wisdom sinks in. So the first step is to, find those stories, those moments in your life that hold some valuable lesson.
Identify them.
Yeah. And then think about who needs to hear them. Who in your life could benefit from that experience? Your kids, your friends, people at work.
Even people you meet along the way.
Exactly. You just got to be open. Pay attention to those little nudges you get.
Those gut feelings.
Yeah, like this person needs to hear this.
And if you're not sure, pray about it. Ask for guidance.
Right. Be
You
intentional.
don't have to write a book or give a TED Talk or anything. Wisdom can be shared in really simple ways.
Absolutely. A conversation, an email, even something you post online.
If it resonates with someone, that's all that matters.
Exactly. Just get it out there. And if you're feeling stuck, if you're struggling to find the words, remember the story of Moses. He wasn't a great speaker.
He had Aaron.
Right. God gave him Aaron to be his voice.
So we can find those people too, to support us, to help us communicate, to encourage us.
Because building a legacy of wisdom, it's a team effort. We need each other.
I like that. Supporting each other, learning from each other.
Passing it on.
Because in the end, what matters isn't what we achieve, it's what we give, the impact we have.
It's about the ripple effect.
So as we wrap up, think about this. What stories do you have that could unlock someone else's breakthrough?
What wisdom are you holding on to that could light someone's path?
Your experiences matter. Your story matters. And people need to hear it.
So share it. Take that first step and just watch what happens. You'll be amazed by the ripple effect.
It's beautiful to think about, A legacy of wisdom just keeps growing, keeps expanding, even after we're gone.
That's a legacy worth leaving.